Thanks, that's great. Thank you very much. As Ellen says, I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller to the convention. Really pleased to be here today to talk to you about the Monumental Welsh Women campaign that is now in its fourth of 5 years. Monumental Welsh Women was set up in 2018 to address the fact that there was not a single public statue of a named Welsh woman in Wales. We have to be that specific because there's this guy on Twitter that always bangs on about the tomb of Queen Victoria in North Wales. And of course, there's Martha Hughes Cannon in America. Welsh women have been excluded from the public space, essentially, and the cultural landscape, and that is important, and we needed to rectify that matter. In 2019, the BBC had the Hidden Heroines programme, a week of programmes featuring a shortlist of 5 women that became the Monumental Welsh Women. Those 5 women went to public vote to choose the first statue of a named Welsh woman in Wales. Those women were Elizabeth Andrews, Betty Campbell, Crynogwyn, Elaine Morgan, and Newport's Lady Rhondda. 5 different women of 5 different classes, times, expertise and location, all Welsh, all known in their own time very well and all brilliant. Thanks to the opportunity afforded by the regeneration of Central Square in Cardiff, funding was off to a good start for the winning monument. And Helen Molyneux, who chairs the Monumental Welsh Women campaign, I only chair the Newport group, her favourite fact that she always quotes, which I love, is that more people voted for the BBC's Hidden Heroine polls than for the semi-finals of Strictly that year, which is very important. As most people in the room will know, Betty Campbell won that vote. I don't think anyone was particularly disappointed that who they voted for didn't win. It was a Cardiff woman that won the Cardiff statue. She was a woman of Butetown on a pedestal situated in a location next to Butetown. Following the commissioning of the first statue, the group of women that were involved in the Hidden Heroines programme got together, including Angela V. John, who's Lady Rhondda's biographer and has spoken at this convention previously, and the Monumental Welsh Women campaign was born. The mission was 5 statues of all 5 women in 5 years. Betty Campbell was unveiled in 2021, so 2021 was when the clock started running. So reviving Lady Rhondda. Lady Rhondda is the only woman of Gwent on that list of hidden heroines, and she was one of the 20th century's leading feminists. A young suffragette who was raised in Newport, who became a newspaper editor and founder. She was an international businesswoman and civil rights campaigner. Yet she was almost unknown both locally and nationally by the end of the 20th century, just 40 years after her death. As Angela V. John often says, these women get easily forgotten despite their achievements. Work had already begun to restore her reputation, however, before the Hidden Heroines programme, to revive interest in her life and works and recognise her national influence before the programme aired. Her portrait had been bought in 2011 by the House of Lords and hung in the House of Lords restaurant cafe there. And Professor Angela V. John's seminal biography had been published a year later in 2013. In 2015, a group of local people in Newport, including me and other women in this room, crowdfunded for a blue plaque to be put on a house at Risca Road, about a 10-minute walk. If you go straight down out of the Cathedral, you'll find the blue plaque on Risca Road, marking the place of her 1913 suffragette outrage, the setting on fire of a postbox as part of the Women's Social and Political Union campaign for Votes for Women. In 2020, the statue for Lady Rhondda Group was set up under the umbrella of the Monumental Welsh Women campaign as the local group to campaign and fundraise for the first statue of a woman of Gwent. Lady Rhondda's great-grandfather left Mager in the early 19th century for Merthyr Tydfil, and his eldest son, Samuel Thomas, opened a colliery in 1849. His son, Lady Rhondda's father, David Alfred Thomas, or D.A. Thomas as he was better known, followed his father into business and amassed a fortune thanks to his Cambrian collieries. D.A. was, unusually for the time, pro-union and collective bargaining, although anti-syndication. He was also a liberal politician. In June 1882, D.A. married Sybil Margaret, daughter of George Augustus Haig from Radnorshire, part of the Scottish Haig family. There they are on your left of the screen. In the 1890s, Sybil became president of the Welsh Union of Women's Liberal Associations, which was strongly feminist and pro-suffrage for women. Her sisters were also prominent suffragettes and both went to prison for acts of violence in the name of the cause. D.A. and Sybil had one child, their daughter, Margaret Haig Thomas, born in 1883. Lady Rhondda was actually born in London, but spent her childhood and was raised in the family home at Lanwern House near Newport. As a young woman, she set up the Newport branch of the WSPU, led by the Pankhursts, and here she is in the middle photograph on the streets of Newport as a young suffragette, parading the streets with her suffragette colleagues. During the 1910 election, she attacked the car of Herbert Asquith and gained notoriety. During this time, she also became her father's business associate at the suggestion of her mother. An annual salary of £1,000 made her one of the highest paid women in the country. In 1913, as part of a national suffragette campaign attacking post boxes across the country, not just in Newport, the brainchild of suffragette Emily Wilding Davison, who unfortunately died at the Derby not long afterwards, Lady Rhondda was arrested and sent to prison in Usk. She went on hunger strike, as was the suffragette response, and was released under the notorious Cat and Mouse Act. With suffragette activity suspended on the outbreak of World War I, Lady Rhondda took on more of her father's business responsibilities, especially as DA held important posts in the Lloyd George government. In 1915, Lady Rhondda survived the sinking of the Lusitania and returning from America with her father from a trip to the States. Lady Rhondda spent almost 3 hours in the water before her rescue. She was actually saved by a wicker chair that rose to the surface and brought her with it, otherwise she would not have survived. And when she was lifted out of the water, she was presumed dead, but regained consciousness on board a rescue ship later. She learnt to swim shortly after, which is more than I would have done. In 1918, she became Chief Controller of Women's Recruitment and moved to London and sat on 31 boards. She never lived in Wales again, but in 1919 she was part of the group that bought the Lysets business in Newport, so retained her business interests in the town. She inherited the title Viscountess Rhondda following the death of her father, D.A., and in 1920 she petitioned the Lords for the right to sit and vote, citing the Sex Disqualification Removal Act of 1919. A committee found in her favour, and she almost made it. But Lord Birkenhead demanded a review, and after he packed the committee with like-minded peers, her petition was refused. She spent the rest of her life campaigning for women in the Lords, and did live to see, almost 4 decades later, the passing of the Life Peerages Act 1958, but died just weeks before the first women took their seats in the second chamber. Lady Rhondda was the first woman elected to the Institute of Directors and sat on dozens of boards. In a life full of impressive activism, Lady Rhondda herself considered her greatest achievement to be the founding of her weekly interwar and left-leaning newspaper, Time and Tide. Founded in the wake of the First World War and the 1918 Representation of the People Act, which extended voting rights to all men and some women, including Lady Rhondda, Time and Tide offered weekly coverage of politics and the arts, launching in 1920 with an all-woman board. The following year, it was in this paper that she launched the 6-Point Group, echoing the People's Charter of 1838. The 6-Point Group made sex equality paramount and championed further women's and children's rights, including equal pay, protection for unmarried and widowed mothers, and ending of child assault. And I think it's interesting that feminists still campaign on these issues today. Lady Rhondda was a pivotal leader in the continued fight for equal franchise, as all men over 21 now had the vote, but only some women. And in the middle photo there, you can see she's leading an equal political rights demonstration in 1926, 2 years before the 1928 Equal Franchise Act became law. So she continued to campaign for women's rights to vote, even after she herself had the vote. Lady Rhondda became Time and Tide's second editor in 1926 and remained so for the rest of her life. This is an important woman using her privilege, connections, and fortune to drive radical legislative change for women and children. She died and was buried in 1958 with her parents in Llanwern Church in Newport, and just 5 weeks ago, Lady Rhondda's statue was unveiled in the city centre. The bronze monument to Lady Rhondda by Jane Robbins. So Margaret Haig Thomas is the figurehead. She stands proud and leans forward, holding the first of a circle of hands cast from real women and girls of today, a couple of whom are in this room, including me. She is leading the way. She's a woman of history, linking to the women of now, inspiring the women of the future. Jane Robbins created her as a woman in her 40s, in her prime, a face of determination and endurance. She holds her newspaper Time and Tide close to her heart and wears the suffragette sash of her young radicalism. The bottom section of the monument is ship-shaped and in weathered steel, connecting Lady Rhondda to the steel and shipping industry of Newport that she was a part of, and also a reference to her survival on the Lusitania. She bears the scar from her rescue on her wrist and wears the brooch that features in the portrait of her hanging in the House of Lords. All the statues were commissioned to be more than a woman on a plinth. They're a figurative representation of the woman, yes, but they also represent the story of these women and the places where they lived. And it's interesting to note that the sun always shines on a monumental Welsh woman unveiling, because these are the women that changed the weather. Last year we unveiled Cronogwyn in Llangrannog by Sebastian Boysen. So Cronogwyn, or Sarah Jane Rees, known by a bardic name of Cronogwyn, stands on a rock. The rock apparently is a real rock found somewhere in Llangrannog Bay, and there is a prize for someone who finds the rock. To my knowledge, no one has done so far. The fishes of the rock continued into her dress, representing her as the master mariner and teacher of dozens of Cronogwyn's captains in her seafaring school. Male graduates captained ships under her teaching, the ships that she was not allowed to captain herself as a woman. Working as a sailor on ships between Wales and France, she led a courageously unconventional life for a woman of the time. And the statue also features her little dog by her side that she used to take walking and was quite well known for having a love of animals. Cronogwyn reads aloud her poem The Ring that famously won her the Eisteddfod Award for Poetry in 1865. She was the first woman to take the prize at the National Eisteddfod. Bardic names are anonymous, so it was not known that Cronogwyn was a woman until the winner was announced to an astonished crowd at that Eisteddfod. A head teacher at a local school at age 21, overcoming local opposition to a woman taking the role. And Cronogwyn was a famous orator and temperance supporter, raising funds for many churches, charities and causes by public speaking, lecturing and preaching across Wales and America on tour. She stands in the community garden on the hill overlooking Llangrannog. If you do get there, do go and visit. It's an absolutely beautiful spot. The garden was also fundraised for by the local group that led the Cronogwyn Monument campaign and remains in the ownership of the community. We were in a race with the Cronogwyn group and unfortunately they beat us. So the 2023 statue belongs to West Wales. She became the third statue in 2023. Elaine Morgan by Emma Rogers was unveiled in 2022. At the Mountain Ash Health Centre, unveiled by her sons and grandchildren in March of that year. Elaine Morgan was a screenwriter, TV producer, and evolutionary theorist, and she sits on a throne of waves, a link to the aquatic ape theory that she popularised, pushing women's role in evolution to the front. She is surrounded by leaves of paper that kind of merge into the waves, showcasing examples of her writing, both as an award-winning BBC screenwriter and best-selling author of The Descent of Woman. Her BBC work includes The Life and Times of Lloyd George and How Green Was My Valley in the 1970s. She sits pondering with a pen in mouth, mirroring the famous photo of the much-loved Western Mail columnist. You can find her installed outside the Ticallan Land Medical Centre in Mountain Ash, Rhondda and Taff. And our first monumental Welsh women, Betty Campbell by Eve Shepherd in 2021. She stands on a map of Tiger Bay, where she lived and worked and became Wales' first black head teacher. Betty Campbell is the mother tree. She provides shelter to a series of time-travelling children that work their way around the statue. You'll notice little things in this statue every time you go and visit, but the children actually go back in time. So the young girl in the hijab is the modern girl, and you work your way back around to a child in the 1940s dress. There are hidden stories, faces and places across and around the sculpture. A young child plays with a skip modelled on the ship that Betty Campbell's merchant sailor father was on when he was killed during World War II. The face of Nelson Mandela is buried within the bark at the back. Betty Campbell was a prominent anti-apartheid campaigner and met Mandela when he came to Wales. This is the story of a remarkable woman and a unique place, with 2 bronze chairs incorporated within the design to allow visitors to become a part of the piece of art, selfie chairs. You can find Betty Campbell in Central Square, Cardiff. Just as you come out of the station, just keep walking straight. She was a community activist, local councillor, and was one of the first 6 women to become students at Cardiff Teacher Training College when it began admitting female students. Later in her career, she helped create Black History Month in the UK, having stumbled upon it in America, and she joined education commissions. Our 5th monumental Welsh woman is Elizabeth Andrews. She's due to be unveiled in 2025. Labour activist and trade unionist, her cry was educate, agitate and organise. She was a champion of women and children's rights in South Wales. Elizabeth Andrews was born to an illiterate mining family, and she became the Labour Women's Organiser in Wales, setting up women's sections she described as working women's universities. She led the successful campaign for pit baths, reducing the relentless impact of dirt brought back to the home and the need for big tin baths of water impacting on women's health, particularly during their frequent pregnancies. She gave evidence to a parliamentary commission on the lives of miners' families. In 1920, she became one of the earliest female magistrates in Wales. And the final campaign is now live, so please support the 5th and final monumental Welsh woman. These women are all pioneers, game changers, and leave huge legacies. These women deserve to take up space in the public place. These are the first 5. Please tell your friends. Thank you very much.
Wasn't that good? It takes some doing to cover all that ground and all that information and still come in on time. Brilliant, Julie. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi for starting the day off so well for us and reminding us about a woman of Newport whom we celebrate and memorialise today. Wonderful. And congratulations to the campaign and to the people of Newport for supporting this particular campaign. I would add, as a proud Rumney Valley girl, that Crynogwen won her first poetry prize at the Rumney Eisteddfod in December 1865, exactly 200 years ago. And it's because that one of the commentators on the Eisteddfod said that how surprising it was that a young girl should win a poetry prize, a protest, which is quite a complicated form of poetry, written in Welsh, and that it must have been a man who helped her to write it. It's a nasty article, I read it, and I thought, it's not surprising that she said, right, I'll show him, and she went to compete in the National Eisteddfod and won the protest there as well, beating the men at their game and saying, right, if I can win money at an Eisteddfod for writing poetry, why do I go on teaching? A few of us have said that to ourselves, over the years, but no, da iawn. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Julie, thank you so much.